I'm not crazy, let me explain. So I was originally supposed to be called Nicholas, but then my cousin ended up being born first, meaning it was either a stroke of luck or the coin flip of fate that I ended up with the name Alex. Well, Alexander for short, long for But suffice to say, I never really put too much thought into my name. That was until I fast forwarded to the present with my somewhat revived fascination for internet horror, leading me to the creation of the adaptation Ted's Caving Journal, an internet horror series based on my favorite creepypasta, Ted the Caver. Somehow it was well received, thank you. And I was about to move on to other things when one small detail caught my eye. It was one short comment that would inevitably make me question my very own existence, thus leading me down one massive existential rabbit hole as I uncovered internet horror's biggest coincidence. So without further ado, welcome to the Alexverse, as we try and answer the age-old question, why are there so many Alexes in internet horror? No, seriously, why? Now I'll quickly start with a summary of how I ended up here, just so that you have some context as to what it's like when an Alex realizes their life might be predetermined by some sort of fate. That fate being these guys. Picture this, it's a random Wednesday night. You're scrolling through YouTube until you find a video by two of your favorite creators, Wendigoon and Meat Canyon. That's an hour long where they analyze one of your favorite creepypastas, Ted the Caver, and you think to yourself, ooh, we're eating good tonight. So you start watching the video. It's hilarious, I highly recommend checking it out. And as you're watching, you hear this.
Like, look at these photos too. I was like, God, how has there not been just a found footage film of this? Like, point of view, just him like pushing through. Oh, God.
And you suddenly sit back and you think to yourself, who'd be dumb enough to do that? Me. Yeah. See, I didn't realize it at the time, but that very moment would be the beginning of a journey that would change the trajectory of my life. Okay, that sounds way too dramatic. I basically became a YouTuber. And out of the hold my beer moment came an internet horror series made by an Alex, which begs the question, did I make this series because Wendigoon told me to, or is there actually some omnipotent force weaving my thread of fate? That doesn't sound right. Anyways, to answer that question, we have to go back to the first Alex, or at least the first popular one. Now, Alexes or Alexanders or Alexandras have been around for a few thousand years at this point, as the name itself dates back to ancient Greece. The etymology of the word is derived from alexin, meaning to repel, to ward off, to defend, and anir or andros, meaning man. Or at least that's what Wikipedia tells me. Listen, I know it's not a credible source, but almost all the other sources that gave me some definition of the word Alex were all baby name websites. So I picked my poison. But regardless, the name Alexander essentially means to repel/defend men. Or as the Greeks so eloquently put it, the protector of man. Which, funnily enough, leads us to our first Alex. A guy who created one of the largest empires in history before even experiencing a midlife crisis. A guy so fond of his name, he decided to name almost everything after himself, with one of the only exceptions being Bucephala, in honor of his horse, Bucephalus. I am, of course, talking about Alexander the Great, the man who made Alexes popular, and did some other less notable things like defeating the Persian Empire. But I'm not here to explain the history of old man Alex. I'd rather you watch someone way more qualified and much funnier, John Green, and his crash course video about why I'm probably called Alex. Links in the description. See, Alexander the Great is more so an honorable mention when it comes to the Alexverse, as he was probably the biggest influence in popularizing the name Alex. And I mean, if you ask most people to try and name an Alex off the top of their head, they'll probably point to the Great One. And before we venture forth into the Spider-Verse I bought off of Wish, I just want to say that this will be more of an overview of the many Alexes I could find as well as their work, and not so much a deep dive into each respective series or media made by them, because, well, there are much better videos on the internet that do just that. So now that the origin story is out of the way, we can finally look at how horror, coincidentally combined with Alex's, has created some of the most popular unfiction stories on the internet, starting with the man, the mythos, the monument legend himself, Mr. Manticore, or as some might know him, Alex Kansas. Now, the Monument Mythos is an analog horror many of you may be familiar with, as the series itself has garnered millions of views with countless people analyzing the series itself, and I think there's a good reason for why that is. Because an Alex made it, of course. So stupid. No, that's not. Well, I mean, their name is Alex, but it's not because their name is Alex. Never mind. Here's my point. The Monument Mythos was one of the first horror series I actually went and watched when I started getting back into internet horror. And to say that it was a little overwhelming would be an understatement. There is a lot to the overarching narrative of the series, but you cannot deny the amount of passion and effort that shines through because of that fact. The series has its own sort of charm and its almost absurd way of storytelling. If I were to try and describe the Monument Mythos to someone, I would basically say it's how non-Americans view American history. And the ironic thing is, that joke might actually have some truth to it. After researching more into the series and its creator, I found out that Alex Kansas intentionally wrote a level of satirical commentary on how American media tends to view itself and not so much the rest of the world at times. And the even more comical thing was, after watching the entire series, I actually ended up learning more about American history than was probably intended. You'll have a really complicated presidential history, sheesh. But in all honesty, I really did enjoy the almost Lovecraftian horror combined with some of America's most iconic monuments. And I don't want to get too into spoilers with any of these, but if you are just a fan of conspiracy theories, plus eldritch horror, plus pseudo superheroes, I guess, combined with some of the most creative writing I've ever seen, please go check out the Monument Mythos on YouTube. It's free. And if you're debating on the horror aspect of it all, well, let's just say this series left me second guessing the inanimate nature of every statue I'll ever walk past ever again. On to the next Alex. Now, a very popular subgenre that has come out of internet horror is the infamous term I've already mentioned that you see in almost all indie horror YouTube projects nowadays, that being analog horror. And some of the most influential work that helped define the subgenre was made by, you guessed it, Alex Kister, creator of the Mandela Catalogue. The Mandela Catalogue is a mixed media horror series that has honestly become one of the most popular in the subgenre of analog horror, and for good reason. Alex Kister does an exceptional job at telling a story through a rather limited means, and his ability to instill fear by using what would conventionally look like a somewhat goofy image just goes to show how good his writing can be. For example, when I first saw this picture, it came off as a little creepy, but honestly nothing terrifying. Yet it's the context and implication behind this image that made it the reason I couldn't go to sleep that night. And from the wave of popularity that came with the Mandela Catalogue, so did a lot of criticism. I mean, these were the defining years for analog horror, and people were already calling out tropes and cliches present within the subgenre. I mean, insert iconic Germa face. No, not that one, the other one. So how did Alex Kister respond to this? Well, he did what any Alex would do and channeled the power of his name into some sort of creative output, thus subverting the expectations of his viewers through a new means of storytelling. Yes, yes. Classic Alex move. So dumb. Okay, no, not exactly, but we can clearly see growth throughout Alex Kister's content, from his first volume being filmed literally on his phone, to some of his most recent content having a literal stop-motion short film in it. I mean, it's awesome to see how he explores new media to tell his story. You see, for me, the Mandela Catalogue really highlights how limitations can at times be your strengths, and when combined with a great story, can produce some truly bone-chilling moments. So if you're looking for an extremely uncanny horror series that explores religious themes, as well as what would happen if you can't trust your friends, your TV, your family, your cow, hell, are you even sure you're you? Well then look no further, for the Mandela Catalogue has got you covered. I highly recommend checking it out. Disclaimer though, watch it with the lights on. Anyways, which Alex is up next? Minecraft. A game so popular, it's left its mark on pretty much every genre, as countless people have drawn inspiration from it over the years. The game is even an honorable mention when it comes to the Alexverse, as Minecraft even has its own canonical Alex, a playable character alongside Steve. But how does any of this have anything to do with internet horror? As my friend Dylan used to say, it's just a block game for kids, right? Insert MC Old Root. An old internet mystery that utilized coded messages, obscure ciphers, and Minecraft gameplay to form one hell of an ARG, or for those not familiar with the term because they aren't chronically online, an alternate reality game, created by none other than Alex Bale. Now, originally I wasn't exactly familiar with Alex Bale's work until I checked out his channel and realized he was the creator of the Spongebob conspiracy series I never knew I needed to watch, and after binging the Mrs. Puff Theory video, great video, highly recommend checking it out. I knew we were in the presence of a theorist, no, an animator, nay, a filmmaker. Not because of how bloody well done his Don't Feed the Muse series is, but rather because it's what his YouTube bio told me. You see, the thing is, Alex Bale's channel is stacked with so many insanely good projects, some of them linked in some way, shape, or form with Spongebob, but still, the dude is a master in his field. The level of quality in his projects, not only production-wise, but just pure creativity / critical thinking skills, just goes to show how much he cares for and enjoys making films, especially around the genre of horror. Who would have thought? But the thing is, the deeper I sunk into his content, the more I realized the actual depths he will go to, especially when it comes to the aforementioned ARGs. Minecraft Old Root isn't even a part of Alex Bale's main channel, and from what I could gather, it was just a fun side project he started roughly 10 years ago, cause well, why not? And it ended up becoming one of Minecraft's most popular internet horror ARGs. This dude's just built different. Alas, I have never really been a big fan of alternate reality games, mainly because I didn't major in military grade code breaking when I was in university, but Alex Bale just knocks it out of the park when it comes to creative ways to abuse how he can deliver information to tell his story. From creating an entire Spongebob conspiracy series that would span over multiple different channels, all feeding into a larger narrative, to creating a Where's Waldo horror short. That was my favorite one, by the way. Alex Bale, in my opinion, pushes the boundaries of narrative storytelling on YouTube by using elements I would never have even thought of, like a YouTube banner. Bro, what? So, I'm a real Alex. And if you're someone that enjoys pure terror, fun theories, thought-provoking ARGs, Spongebob, then I highly recommend checking out his stuff. And the fact that I didn't know who this was prior to making this video is an absolute tragedy. Don't be me, go check out his stuff, and remember, things aren't always what they seem. It's a dark and stormy night. You boot up an old game cartridge you bought at a garage sale earlier today. As you begin to reminisce over memories of playing this game as a kid, you feel your nostalgia turn into horror, as the game you remember is not what's in front of you. This isn't Wii Sports, this is Wii Sports Resort. Hello Nintendo fans, sorry for assembling you all here today, but I just need you to take some responsibility for this nightmare. Ben Drowned, an old internet creepypasta turned ARG following the events of a supposedly haunted copy of The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask, created by, you probably guessed it again, Alex Hall. Now you might be thinking, a haunted video game? That's old news, man. Such an overused cliche. Who do you think was the originator of said cliche? The OG that made said cliche so popular, you call it a cliche. I'm glad we're on the same page. So in 1995's Jumanji starring Robin Williams, I'm sorry, Sorry, back on topic. Ben Drowned is not only a very early popular creepypasta, but it is also partially responsible for popularizing gaming as a theme within creepypastas. And for those wondering why I'm talking about pasta, let me explain. A creepypasta is basically an internet horror story. The word itself is derived from copy-paste, thus copy-pasta, and if you add horror to that, you get the gist. Now, Ben Drowned follows the story of a broke college student that finds a dodgy-looking copy of Majora's Mask, an old and already kinda creepy Legend of Zelda game at a garage sale. After getting home and booting up the game, he notices a few inconsistencies while playing, all of which seemingly caused by the previous player's save file, Ben. And after trying to delete said save, things begin to take a much darker turn. See, the interesting thing about Ben Drowned is I remember reading it as a kid and it terrified me. The thought of playing a game you've played before only to realize it's nothing like you remember scares me even now. And whether the story has taken a new route, I will always recall the fear I felt after reading that story and then booting up whatever I was playing, hoping that nothing's changed. But the real horror of that story is getting your game saves deleted, dude. I mean, imagine buying a secondhand cartridge off of some granddad knowing this is his missing grandkid stuff to then boot everything up, see like a 99% save file and think, haha, sucks to be you, delete. I'd haunt the hell out of you too, buddy. Anyways, Ben Drowned is a staple when it comes to gaming creepypastas and honestly just a very nostalgic read. So if you are a fan of The Legend of Zelda or just video games in general, then I would highly recommend checking it out. Whew! So, we've covered a few Alexes at this point, and there's actually been a through line that connects them all together, and I'm curious if you've noticed what that is. And don't say the name Alex, that one's it's kind of obvious. You see, all the Alexes mentioned so far have all been creators that have made a piece of media within the genre of internet horror. Well, okay, maybe besides Alexander the Great, of course. The only thing that guy made was the decision to keep marching east. But is this really where the Alexverse comes to an end? What happens when there are no more creators named Alex? Well, I'd bet all of my Magic the Gathering cards, if an Alex didn't make it, you best believe there's an Alex in it. And not just some NPC to the story, but a prominent character that proves to be a driving force to the plot. So let's jump back in as we look at Alexes as characters rather than creators, in yet again some of the biggest unfiction stories on the internet, starting with limestone wasps. Wait, what? So, marble hornets. Now, I couldn't make a video discussing internet horror without the best dressed monster showing its face, or lack thereof. The Slenderman needs no introduction as being one of the most terrifying monsters to grace the internet with its horrifying presence. There are countless videos, stories, video games, and even a mainstream movie made by Sony about the monster. But apparently it bombed though, I don't know, I haven't seen it. But none of that comes close to the early YouTube creators that came together to produce one of the largest collaborative projects I've ever seen, all of which centered around Slenderman, with the most prominent series out of the bunch being titled Marble Hornets, created by Troy Wagner, Joseph D. Lage, and Tim Suttons. Sorry if I mispronounced any of those. Now, I would like to sum up the series for you, but I'm afraid we would be here for a few hours. So instead, I would just like to discuss the main antagonist of the story, and you'll never guess what their name is. That's right, Alex. Alex Kralie. Marble Hornets was the title of a cancelled short film Alex was creating. There's a meta joke in there somewhere. And we soon begin to learn why Alex decided to call off his project. It turns out that while filming, Alex caught something on camera that he wasn't supposed to. A presence that would change how he operates forever. This series is usually credited as being the start of the Slenderverse, as we would begin to see other channels creating similar projects, all centered around the man in the suit. No, not Godzilla. And while the Slenderverse grew larger, so did its adoptive coincidental child, the Alexverse. See, the funny thing is, as these new channels started coming out with their own respective projects based around Slenderman, we also started getting more in-universe Alexes. In the series Everyman Hybrid, one of the main characters has a younger brother named Alex Koval. In Dark Harvest 00, one of the main characters alongside Chris is yet again another Alex. And I know I'm glossing over these series rather quickly, but there is just so much content when it comes to the Slenderverse that I'm just the wrong Alex for the job. There is a brilliant documentary on YouTube that details the entire story of Slenderman, as well as the makings of all these series and how they impacted the very essence of the monster, made by, and I promise I'm not making this up, Alex Hera. There's just so many. Why are there so many? I'll link the documentary in the description below, but not only did Alex Hera pull together an entire horror community from over a decade ago, can't even fathom how difficult that must have been, they also made the video that gaslit me into making this one. See, after contemplating why Metal Mockingjay would say something like this, I stumbled across a video made by Alex Hera titled The History of Analog Horror. Another fantastic video, highly recommend. And while watching, I saw this.
The genie's out of the bottle now. There's no putting it back. We've had so many Alexes come in here and kick down the door and say, "Hi, I'm Alex," and stick their hand out. And that, you know what? There's no putting this genie back in the bottle. You and your entire club this up, buddy.
To which I'll say, welcome, Nightmind, and I'm so sorry. Anyways, where did I put my lamp? But the coincidences didn't stop there, as I scrolled down to the comments section to find my suspicions confirmed. I was not alone. The Alexverse exists. And instead of developing some level of existential dread, I couldn't help but ponder. This is the funniest thing I have ever seen, and as an Alex, it's now my duty to share it with you. Now, in-universe Alexes aren't only limited to the Slenderverse, as we still see this phenomenon take place in other popular series. And now you might be thinking, ooh, what's next? GREYLOCK? Yes, I'm not kidding, you said it. So a construction worker, a kennel owner, and a dog walk into each other. And it's your worst nightmare. Also, that nightmare's real now because you thought about it for too long. So welcome to the world of GREYLOCK, a more recent analog horror series created by Rob Gavigan and Matt Reeves. Now, when I tell you this was by far the most terrifying project I watched on this list, I don't mean that lightly. GREYLOCK does a fantastic job at really capturing the essence of horror, and whether it be body horror, psychological horror, cosmic horror, a mountain — this series made me scared of a mountain, a big rock, you know, not the cool ones where you go hiking and stuff, more so mass sacrificial underground tunnels. So probably still a lot of walking. Anyways, the point being, when you go watch this, brace yourself for a rather complicated plot, as the story may seem a little all over the place, but I promise you, the deeper you look, the more you will be rewarded for your efforts, as GREYLOCK has one of the most detailed and fleshed out worlds I have ever seen. And as someone that has played way too much Dungeons and Dragons, the DM went crazy on this one. From concept to storytelling to practical effects, for me, GREYLOCK goes beyond any other analog horrors in terms of how real the series feels. And amongst the few characters within the story, we find ourselves being greeted by Alexander Michael Marsh, as he gets shown a tape recording of how to responsibly turn his thoughts into reality. I mean, what could go wrong, right? Right? Alexander is just another poor soul stuck within the universe of GREYLOCK, and I really don't want to spoil this one any more than I have, so if you are just a fan of pure terror, John Carpenter's The Thing, and your imagination just being the worst thing you can trust, then please go check out this series. Alright, have you ever had a dream that you're being watched by two dark red eyes from the corner of your room? No? Well then, buckle up, as we take a look at an analog horror series called Dreams of an Insomniac, created by a cartoon character turned YouTuber, Pastra. Now, this is a more recent internet horror series that really takes advantage of the fact that Halloween is actually a terrifying holiday. For one, handing out candy for free is just unrealistic in today's economy. And two, do you just want your kids to go missing? Because that's exactly what happens in this story. 6 of them gone just like that, and the culprit? Just some spooky dude that's never heard of the word Denzel before? Jokes aside, this story takes place on Halloween night, and we're introduced to a character by the name of Alex Williams, as they recount the events that happened to them that night. But little did we know, this wouldn't be the last time we hear from Alex, as they would become the Foundation. Huh? of the story that follows. Like I mentioned earlier, Alex's are almost always somehow linked to the plot. I don't know how, they just are. Dreams of an Insomniac does something very different in how it represents itself, as there are very clear stylistic/artistic choices that Pastra makes when it comes to creating their series. Maybe this stems from the fact that they are just a very good artist, or they utilize some sort of reality-bending powers from the animated realm. But regardless, the colorful visual style in combination with the insanely good music brings a unique atmosphere that feels like it can only exist within the Dreams of an Insomniac world. With that being said, live-action adaptations famously do not have a great track record when it comes to bringing animation to life. RIP Avatar fans. But Pastra has done what Shyamalan could not, wow that's a sentence, and has brought their cast of creepy cartoon characters to the world of the living. And trust me, you do not want to miss out on the horrors that ensue, so please go check out their series. And before we move on, I did actually reach out to Pastra on a pirate's favorite part of the map X, it's just Twitter, to ask what we've all been wondering. Why did you choose to name your character Alex? And their response was honestly very reasonable. Pastra gave me 2 points. The first being that they really enjoy naming characters after sources of inspiration, such as the surname Williams being derived from the Evil Dead series, and Alex just being, well, a reference to almost everything at this point. Now, the second reason Pastra decided to go with Alex wasn't because of its X factor, but rather because of the very nature of the name. Now, I'm going to try be as unbiased as possible when it comes to this topic because, well, my name is Alex. The other massive reason why Alex as a name is so popular, of course setting aside the Great One's influence, is because it's just a solid choice of a name. Alex's can be anyone. One of the biggest factors that influence someone's decision when it comes to choosing a name is knowing that whatever they choose, that decision will play a huge part in defining whoever they are choosing a name for. And this is where Alex's really prove their versatility. I mean, there's Alex, Alex with an I, Alexander, Alexandria, Alexa, Alexis, Alexia, Al. Hell, if you really want to spice things up, you can just get rid of the L and go with Axe. How cool does that sound? And that's why it's usually in the top 100 baby names of all time. Damn, if my mother saw how many baby name websites I've visited over the past few days, she'd be petrified. And with Alex's being so popular within the realm of internet horror for some reason, you would think the biggest streaming platform on the planet wouldn't fall prey to the Alexverse. So when Netflix decided to make a series around the concept of analog horror called Archive 81, I just had to take a look. To sum up 8 50-minute episodes as quickly as I can, our main character is called Dan, and he's a VHS restoration wizard, and he gets hired by a suspicious guy named Virgil to restore some old tapes for way too much money. As Dan begins repairing the tapes, he also checks what's on them, and this is where we get shown the second plot. The tapes are from 1994 and follow the story of this lady named Melody as she investigates this creepy building called the Fissure, filled with even creepier people. We are introduced to a ton of new characters, but the main antagonist is called, you'll never guess, Samuel Spare. Haha, got you. At least that was his name until you fast forward to the end of the series and it's revealed that Sam was just an alias for Alexander Davenport. Really, Netflix? You made me sit through 8 hours for that? Okay, well, I did gloss over a few other plot points like time travel, Lovecraftian mold, the analog version of the Predator from Alien vs. Predator. But Archive 81 was honestly a decent watch, so if you want to see how Netflix puts their spin on the concept of analog horror, I might recommend it, but only if you want to, you know? Besides, we're about to get to the last Alex on this list, an Alex that might just be the most popular out of all the ones mentioned thus far, yet possibly the most controversial inclusion based on the series they created. So join me as I potentially piss off one of the most dedicated fan bases on the internet as we dive into the world of Gravity Falls, created by none other than the legend himself, Alex Hirsch. Now, I'm going to be completely honest with you. The last time I watched anything from the show was when season 1 just started airing on Disney Channel, and that was a while ago. So I thought it would be fun to try and describe the series to you, solely based off of what I can remember. Thus, here's my synopsis of Gravity Falls before I do any revision whatsoever. Enjoy! Gravity Falls follows the story of orphan siblings that must go live with their creepy uncle, played by Jim Carrey. No, Gravity Falls follows the story of 4 siblings that find a closet to another world. No, Gravity Falls follows the story of 2 siblings that are forced to go live with their uncle in his mystery shack. I can't remember what the uncle's name was, but imagine if Tommy Lee Jones and Robert De Niro morphed into a cartoon character. That's kind of what he looks like. Anyways, the series is about these 2 siblings, Mabel and Dipper, that go on little adventures in the mystical land of Oregon, USA. As for main plot points, Dipper has a crush on this lumberjack lady voiced by Velma from the live-action Scooby-Doo movies, so fair play, kid. Mabel gets a pet pig, and Robert De Niro's cartoon doppelganger really likes money, and together this ragtag team fight the Yellow Illuminati. How close was I? I think I did a pretty good job. I'm so sorry. I can't believe I forgot the most important character. A guy so cool, they had to nerf him by making him a side character, yet that didn't even stop him from second guessing his own existence in the story. I am of course alluding to the legendary handyman himself. Handyman. I mean Seuss Ramirez. Jokes aside, Gravity Falls is basically cartoon cryptid heaven. The show follows the twins Maple and Dipper as they find an old book with a 6-fingered handprint on it. That's an important detail, I promise. Which fills them in on the many mysteries locked away within Gravity Falls. Together with their grunkle Stan, that's the uncle's name by the way, Wendy and Seuss, they battle against gnomes, ghosts, a blonde child with telekinetic powers. You know, basically the natural environment everyone makes Australia out to be. Jokes aside, Gravity Falls is a really good show with a fantastic overarching story that spans about 2 seasons. But now you are probably wondering, why would I call this, see up here, a controversial inclusion? You see, Gravity Falls rests within a bit of a gray area. The show itself is marketed towards a younger demographic, thus there isn't anything inherently scary about the series. Yet underneath all the bright colors and cartoon characters lies a small detail we almost overlooked. The very man who made the show is an Alex. And remember, if an Alex made it, you best believe there's more to it. Like I said, Gravity Falls has one of the most dedicated fan bases I have ever seen. So much so that even though the show ended, the story did not, as Alex Hirsch would go on to create a real-life treasure hunt for the fans. And this thing went international. How cool is that? Tell me if this sounds familiar. You leave a bunch of ciphers for people to solve that leads them to more clues which unravel a part of your story. This dude just turned a kid's show into an ARG. And although the show didn't necessarily fall into the genre of horror, the cipher hunt for a real-life statue of the show's main antagonist is just too cool not to include, so that's why Alex Hirsch is a part of the Alexverse. And if it wasn't clear already, please go watch the show. All of season 1 is on YouTube for free. I highly recommend checking it out. So, what now? Well, in the words of Doofenshmirtz, if I had a nickel for every time there was an Alex linked to a popular unfiction series, I'd have 12. Which is a lot, and that's weird. Which begs the question I posed at the start of this video. That being, why are there so many Alexes within the realm of internet horror? Is this all just one really funny coincidence? Or is there a deeper meaning behind what it means to be an Alex? And to answer that question, I got help from another random commenter called Gloomdrake, who was just as baffled by this strange phenomenon as they introduced me to the concept of determinism. Now, unlike actual video essayists, I didn't study philosophy in university, so take everything I'm about to say with a grain of salt. Now, as far as I understand it, Determinism is the belief that our actions are determined by some sort of external force, as opposed to our own decision-making skills. And this concept is usually discussed in tandem with the idea of free will. But funnily enough, this theory can be taken a step further with the idea of nominative determinism, which implies that people's lives are determined by whatever their names are, for the most part. Also, just to preface, I didn't come up with any of these concepts. It was probably some old Greek Stoic dude. So what this all means is that if you are an Alex, it's just a matter of time before you decide to join us. Embrace the darkness and create your own nightmare into a decently paced YouTube horror series that will probably go on for about 2 to 4 years over the course of 4 to 6 parts. And if you aren't an Alex but still want to create within the realm of internet horror, you will feel compelled to add a character named Alex because it's in the top 100 baby names of all time. My voice. And that's exactly, 100% most certainly, the real, definitive reason for why there are so many Alexes within the world of unfiction. Here's my honest opinion. I only got into internet horror around last year, and through a string of coincidences, I ended up making an internet horror series because I thought it would be really fun. And if you do want to blame someone, blame Wendigoon and Meat Canyon for inspiring me. You can also kind of blame Nightmind for inspiring me to make this video. And that's it really. I just thought the Alexverse was way too funny not to talk about, especially since I am an Alex. And if it wasn't clear already, you don't need to be an Alex to make an internet horror series, just as much as you don't need to add a character named Alex. And if you need proof of that, I'll list a few internet horror series that weren't made by Alexes, but are still extremely popular, if not more popular than the ones I've already mentioned. Local 58, Gemini Home Entertainment, The Backrooms, The Walton Files, Ted the Caver, the original creepypasta. Pretty much everything I haven't mentioned insert here. So if you're debating on whether or not you want to create your own internet horror series, or write your own creepypasta, or just dabble a little in the world of unfiction, do it and have fun doing it. Just do it! And with that, this video comes to a close, but I do just want to say I definitely missed some Alexes while making this video, so if you do know of any more, just pop them in the comments down below, because it's always fun when a fellow Alex bumps into a fellow Alex. And then the universe just explodes. And again, I made this video purely because I thought this topic was really funny, so don't take anything too seriously. And with that, all I'll say is thank you for watching. All 7 of you that probably pitched up. So in case I don't see ya, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.